there, Stephen here from Crystal Tractor and Equipment. Now in our service department, we get requests to add additional features all the time. And one of the most common features we get requested to add is a third function hydraulic for your front loader so you can use additional attachments like a grapple. Now I'm here with Steve in the Crystal Tractor service department here in Chiefland, and we're going to be adding a third function to this tractor, show you everything we're going to need to get this job done, and take you step by step through the process. And at the end, we're going to have some bonus footage too, because we're also going to install a canopy up here on the ROPS. So Steve, what are we going to be doing?
Hi, today we're going to be installing a third function on a 1635 HST Mahindra. I'm going to go over all the tools and components of the third function, and we're going to show you how to install it. So we're going to start by going over some of the components that you'll receive with your WR long third function kit. First, we're going to have the third function valve. As you can see, there's a magnetic solenoid on this in 4 different ports. You have a female coupler, a male coupler, and 2 JCI threaded ends. You're also going to receive 2 bolts, 2 nylock nuts, and 2 washers. This will be to secure the third function valve onto the loader. Along with that, you're going to get a couple different hydraulic hoses, pre-made. You might not use all of these in your kit, but you might. You also have a new handle with toggle switches to operate your third function, and a male pigtail that will plug in to your third function. You will also receive a few butt connectors, an inline fuse, and some zip ties. This will be your directions to install your WR long third function. They are double-sided, and they even come with a help number. And down here, we have the bulkhead fitting, which will go on the loader tube. I have 2 more additional hydraulic lines that you can see come with female and male quick coupler ends. These will run down the length of your loader and connect to the bulkhead from the valve. To install this today, we're only going to use a few tools. I have a 3/4 wrench, a 7/8 wrench, a small Phillips head screwdriver, a 19mm socket along with my impact, a 4mm Allen wrench, and some tools for splicing electrical wires. I also recommend a drain pan. That's everything we need to get started. The first step to installing our third function on this model is to remove the loader. What I'm going to do is pull our cotter pin from back here, and this pin should slide out very easily. We'll connect those back together and place them in a safe space so they don't get lost. There's one on the other side also. Again, we just pull this cotter pin, and that pin will slide out. Now to remove the loader, we need to raise the loader and put the kickstand down. So I'm going to hop on the tractor and start it and show you how that process works. The loader kickstand is located right here. All you do is remove this cotter pin and slide that out. To install it, you remove this cotter pin and pin, pull that, and install this so the holes line up. Now that we have our kickstand installed, we can continue removing the loader. In order to remove the loader, once you have the tripod down, you'll lay the loader on the floor. Then you'll manipulate the tilt on the bucket to assist you in lifting off of this loader arm. Once you've cleared the loader arm, you can safely back up. We only need to back up a few feet here in order to install the third function. If you were planning on removing this, you could take these lines off completely here and leave your loader where it is. Now that we've had the loader removed, we're going to start by installing the third function valve. To do that, we need to remove this bracket right here. To do that, I'll be using a 19mm socket on an impact and a 3/4 wrench. And once you get these bolts loose, you are going to want to make sure that this bracket doesn't fall and damage the tractor at all. Our WR long third function kit comes with bolts to replace these, so the bolts we just removed, you can discard. Now that we're about to install our third function valve, we want to take time to remember that the A and B ports should always face up. on this model. You also have the T and P ports that need to face down. Once we got our nuts and bolts finger tight, we're going to use a 19mm ratcheting wrench and a 3/4 wrench to tighten. If you don't have a ratcheting wrench, a 3/4 or 3/8 ratchet will work more than good enough. Now that we have our third function valve installed, we can reinstall our loader. To reinstall this loader, we're going to start the tractor and drive forward towards it. At the same time, we're going to manipulate the loader tilt controls in order to get our loader lined up with these notches. Once we have our loaders back installed, we're going to take our pins we previously removed and reinstall them. They should go in with ease and no need to hit. Okay, just like that, our loader's installed again. Now that we have the loader reinstalled, I'm going to raise the loader and remove the kickstand. In the same fashion we installed it, we'll remove it. Ensuring we replace all of our cotter pins. Before we continue any further installing this third functions, I want to go over some safety tips. First, always make sure you're parked on a flat surface. Once you're parked, ensure that you apply your parking brake. Once your parking brake is applied, and with your tractor off, make sure you release all pressure from your loader valve. Now we're able to install the third function. Now we're going to begin plumbing our third function valve. To do that, we need to find out where our power beyond port is located. On some of our WR long instructions, you can find where that's located. Others don't always tell you. On this particular tractor, our power beyond port is going to be coming from this hose here. Your power beyond port is what's going to supply hydraulic pressure to any function you add to your tractor. In a hydraulic circuit, you need to make sure that once you come from power beyond, you return to tank. With this valve here, we have two different sides, one labeled P for power beyond and one labeled T for tank. You need to ensure that you don't get these crossed or you could damage your tractor or the third function. Today we're going to start by removing the power beyond port here instead of on the loader back there. We do have a 9-inch hose that will make it so we can connect this to our function. Let me show you how that's done. To get started, we're going to place a drain pan underneath our valve. You use your 7/8 wrench and break this free. Once this line's broken free, you will have some drippage. Here we have our 9-inch hose provided with our WR long kit. We're going to connect this male end to the hose we just disconnected. To properly install this, you'll need two 7/8 wrenches. Once we have our 9-inch hose connected, we're going to connect to the P port on the third function valve. Sometimes you might have to reroute these. Just simply go behind the existing hydraulic hoses that are there. Once you have your fitting finger tight, you'll use your 7/8 wrench to tighten the rest of the way. Be sure to tighten your fitting until you feel a decent amount of resistance. Now that we've connected our hydraulic lines from the Power Beyond port to the P port on our 3rd function valve, we're going to use our 24-inch hose provided in the kit to connect from the line we just removed to the T port on the 3rd function valve. It is important to start both sides of your hose before tightening down one side. Because these are JIC fittings, there's no need for Teflon tape or O-rings. Now that we have both sides started, we're going to use our 7/8 wrench to tighten them down. Again, tighten until you feel a decent amount of resistance. Don't forget to use a rag to clean up any excess spills or drips. Once we've installed our hoses to our 3rd function valve, we're going to take our bulkhead fitting and move to the front of the tractor. For this portion of the install, you're going to need a 13mm socket to remove this nut. You will be reusing this nut, so do not discard it. Once you've removed your 13mm nut and have exposed threads, you're going to take your bulkhead fitting, which should be pre-drilled and bent to your model, ensuring that the quick connections face downwards. Reinstall your flat washer and lock washer and 13mm nut. Be sure not to over tighten because you can break these studs off. Ensure you get a snug fit to stop this from moving. Now that we've installed our bulkhead fitting, we're going to run our hydraulic lines from our 3rd function to the front of the loader. On this particular 3rd function install, we're going to start with our male-ended quick coupler and attach it to our female on the 3rd function. Simply pull down on the sheath and firmly press in. And ensure a good connection. The reason we have quick couplers installed here is for if you want to take this loader off in the future, you can simply disconnect these hoses here and not have to worry about removing the hoses completely. If you do remove your loader, ensure you use your dust caps on your quick connectors. Now we're going to run our hose along the arm of the loader and connect it to the bulkhead fitting. Since I connected on the female end at the 3rd function, I'll be connecting to the female end on the bulkhead fitting. You will then take your 7/8 wrench and snug the hydraulic line. We'll continue the same process for our other hose. And again, using your 7/8 wrench, snug the hydraulic hose. If your bulkhead fitting seems to move like it's doing here, tighten your hoses and you can retighten that nut, ensuring not to strip it out. Now that we have our hydraulic hoses ran, we're going to secure them with zip ties to the existing hydraulic hoses. The zip ties provided in your kit are much smaller than the ones I have here. I do recommend using a larger zip tie that's going to hold much better. I start from the front of the bulkhead and work my way back so any slack is left towards the valve and out of the way of the grill. And take mind when you zip tie this that it's not going to interfere with your loader or your grill when you're raising the loader. Also be mindful not to cross your hydraulic hoses. Any slack left in your hydraulic hoses is best kept up here, out of the way of any debris that you might catch while moving. With our hydraulic hoses all secured, we're going to use our snips and take off any excess of the zip ties. Now that we've completed the install on our valve and hydraulic hoses, we'll be flipping over to this side of our directions and starting the electrical installation. To do that, we're going to start by installing this handle. And to do that, we'll have to remove this handle presently on the tractor. To do this, use a small Phillips screwdriver and gently remove the screws. Once all the screws are removed, remove your handle and discard. You will not need this. Once you have your handle removed, you will need to remove this piece of hardware and locking nut from the joystick. Use 2 7/8 wrenches. With our original handle removed and all hardware gone, we'll take our WR long provided handle and our 4mm Allen wrench and loosen the locking bolts. As you can see, when you loosen these, it removes this nut from the inside so you can slide it on and off of the loader joystick. Once you tighten down, it'll securely hold on there. With our locking nuts backed out, we're going to slide our handle onto the joystick. When you tighten these on, ensure you have your handle oriented in a position that's going to be most comfortable for you in operation. I prefer to leave the handle twisted out so it's more ergonomic for your thumb. With handle in proper position, snug your locking bolts so handle does not twist side to side or come off unexpectedly. Now that we have our handle installed, we have to run our wires. As you can see, we have a pigtailed end that's going to connect to the pigtailed end on our valve. We also have a power wire that we'll have to find a power source to connect to. To do this, I'm going to start by removing this lower panel. You will have to loosen some of these bolts on this to get this out of the way. To start, I'm using a 10mm socket on a 1/4" ratchet. We'll start by loosening this. And we're going to fully remove this bolt. And we'll also remove this bolt. To help remove this, we have one additional 10mm bolt underneath this fender. You can fully remove this nut. With our bolts loosened and removed, we can gently remove this side panel. Once you have your zip ties removed and no knots in your wiring, you can slide your pigtailed end and your power wire both through here. Now that we have both of our wires ran where they need to be, we'll take one of the small zip ties provided in the kit and secure it to the handle. While doing this, ensure that your loader lock can operate freely. Now we're going to focus on our pigtailed wire that goes to our 3rd-Function. While running this, you want to ensure that you go behind where that panel is going to bolt to. Once you've gone there, we're going to slide it through the floorboard and pull it all the way through. Now we need to find a safe way to route this wire that's not going to be impeded by any of the pedals or linkages that control the tractor. As you route your wire, Make sure you zip tie along the way. Once you've safely and securely routed your wire, you can connect it to the third function. Any additional wire, you'll want to wind up and zip tie off. On older style third functions, you will not have this pigtail. You'll have wires that you can connect to your toggle switch, and you can get rid of the excess. But with this pigtail, you're going to want to wind it up and zip tie it off to the side. Once you have your wires secured and routed correctly, use your snips and take off any extra zip ties. Now that we've got our control wires run, it's time to run our power wire. Now our power wire needs to go to a positive power source. You can connect this to the positive side of the battery, however you may experience power drain while your tractor's not running. In this instance, we're going to connect it to a key-on fuse. So this function will only be getting power when the key is on. With your power wire ran to a keyed-on fuse, it helps avoid incidents of accidentally bumping your third function switch and operating it while your vehicle's off. To start, we're going to take this end and look underneath the tractor. There's no easy way to get into the fuse panel on this tractor, so we're going to be going over the transmission but under the floorboard. As we push this through here, you'll start to see it come out on the other side. Once you successfully routed your wire to the other side of the tractor, ensuring not to get tangled on anything on the way, you can pull the rest of the slack through and then find yourself a route that's going to clear all objects. Once you successfully routed your power wire free of all moving objects or anything that may get hot, you're going to install your 10 amp inline fuse. This fuse is provided with your WR long kit. You want to ensure there is a good 10 amp fuse in there. And what you'll do is cut that in half and use wire strippers to strip out both sides, leaving about 1/4 inch of exposed wire. You will also do the same on your power wire. However, there is 2 separate sheaths on the power wire. Ensure not to cut through both of them. And remove the black sheath, and then about 1/4 inch on the red. Now that we've exposed our wire, we're going to use a butt connector, which has also come in the WR long third function kit. Slide that over your exposed wire, ensuring the wire gets completely covered. You'll then use a crimping tool and then ensure that you have a good connection. We'll also do the same on our 10 amp fuse. The butt connector provided in the kit is a heat shrink connector. You can use a butane torch or something similar to help melt it. This will help ensure a watertight seal. Now that we have our inline fuse properly placed, we're going to go to our fuse panel and we're going to find a key-on powered fuse that's 10 amp or more. To do this, we're going to use our test light. Take the end of your test light and make sure you're connected to a good ground. Once you're connected to ground, use your pin side with the key on and check for power. Now that we know all of our fuses have key on power, we will turn the key off and find if any of them have power with key off. It does look like our first 2 fuses have key off power, so we're going to make sure we go to one of these lower fuses. All these fuses are 10 amps or higher, so we do not have to worry about going on too small of a fuse. Now that we found the fuse that we want to tie into, we're going to remove the fuse box and pull it out so we can expose the wires behind it. To make this easier, remove the electrical tape and sheathing that covers the wires. If you need to use a knife, do so gently. Once you've exposed the wire that you'd like to connect to on your fuse box, you'll take a Scotch lock connector and slide one end over your orange power wire coming from the 3rd function. Ensure it butts up in there. And place the wire you'd like to tap into over that lock. Then, using a pair of pliers, hold your wires in place and firmly press. Now that we have our power wire from the 3rd function spliced into our fuse box, we're going to use our test light again to ensure we're getting power. With your key on and your test light grounded, use your probe and ensure that you're getting power to your 3rd function fuse. Now that we know we got power and our wiring is complete, we're going to position our fuse box back where it was. Ensure any sheathing you've taken off is replaced. Now that we've finished installing our 3rd function, we're going to reassemble our fenders. Gently lift the floor mat and slide your panel back in. This rear bolt does go through both fenders, so make sure you have that lined up correctly. And don't forget the one nut you took from underneath. Now that all nuts and bolts are installed, we're going to tighten them. Now that we've finished the install on the 3rd function, we want to start the unit and test all hydraulic functions. Make sure our loader operates as it's supposed to and ensure that there's no leaks from anything we touched. Now that we have our unit running with the parking brake set, we're going to check for any hydraulic leaks. It's very important to use a piece of cardboard to check for leaks. You don't want to use your hands. These hydraulic pumps can create a lot of pressure that could injure you. We'll start by taking our cardboard piece and slowly moving it around any connections that we touched. As you can see, we have no leaks yet. You also want to be sure that your hoses will clear your grill guard. If you don't have these zip tied down correctly, they could get snagged and possibly do some damage. As you can also see, our hydraulic valve is operating, and we have no leaks. Now that we know our third function is operating, we can start off our machine. And what you'd like to do every time you exit your machine is turn your key switch to on so your third function has power, and toggle your switches to relieve pressure. This will make it a lot easier when you're installing your grapple. At the end of our installation, you may have some extra hydraulic hoses remaining. On this particular model, we have two different ways of being able to install this. We decided to use the 9-inch hose provided in the kit and tying into here. As you remember, we took this hose from here. You also have the option of removing this hose from here and entirely taking out of the system and using one hose. We've decided to use the two hose method. It is a little easier and quicker. Now that we've finished installing our third function, we've checked for leaks, we've made sure it operates correctly, we want to finally check the fluid. It's not often that you need to top off fluid after installing a third function. However, it is important to check every time. And as we can see, we're plenty full on hydraulic fluid. Now that we've finished installing our third function and ensuring everything works correctly, we're going to install a canopy on this unit. Canopy is a great to have, especially down here in Florida. Another customer favorite we have is the canopy. Today I'm going to go over with you how to install our Bearco canopy system. As you can see, I already have it unboxed in front of me. I'll go over with all the parts included in the kit. To start, we have our mounting brackets. We'll be using these smaller U-bolts to mount on the ROPs of the unit. This kit does come with larger U-bolts because it's a universal kit and it fits multiple tractors. To secure this U-bolt to the ROPs, we'll be using square washers and nylock nuts, 17 millimeter. Once we have our brackets installed on the ROPs, we'll be adding our arms to the unit. The 3 holes you see here will face towards the rear of the tractor, and you will choose which 2 to use. If you'd like more coverage on the front, use the rear 2. If you'd like more coverage on the rear, use the front 2. To install these, we'll use the carriage bolts and nylock nuts supplied with the kit to secure them to our mounting brackets. We also have 8 of these devices. These will simply clamp around there. We'll use one of our smaller carriage bolts to secure. This is an exclusive to Bearco. You won't find this on any other canopy system. The opposite end of these will also sandwich around the armage that we've already installed. To install this canopy, all we'll be using is a 13 millimeter socket, a 17 millimeter socket, our impact driver or a ratchet, and also ratcheting wrenches, 17 and 13. You can use regular wrenches or a ratchet if that's what you have. To start your installation, you're going to take your mounting bracket and ensure that this side is facing up. You'll then go on the outside of your ROPs and feed your U-bolt through and hold that securely. You'll then add one of your square washers and a nylock nut. Because we're just putting this on hand tight, you can start these down here. When you're ready to tighten, move it up. Ensure you chose the right hole to add your U-bolts. If you go too high, you might be stuck in the ROPS and your canopy might not have room to fit. We'll be using the same procedure on the opposite side of your ROPS. Now that we have our brackets hand tight, you can raise them to where you'd like them best. I try to get my top U-bolt in line with the bend of the ROPS. And at this time, we'll use our impact with a 17 and just lightly. You want to make sure this bracket wants to stay flush against the ROPS. We might be moving this later on in the installation, but you want to get it about where you want it. We'll then do the same on this side. And the goal is to make sure they're roughly the same height. Once you have your brackets roughly positioned, use a tape measure to ensure it'll fit. We measure at 35 inches. I know my canopy is wider than 35 inches, so I'll be putting my support brackets on the outside. When installing these arms, use your carriage bolt and go from the outside. Ensure the square fits there and can pivot. Then choose the holes you'd like to use. We will be using the back two holes. You'll slide that on, install your square washer and nut. We'll then repeat that process on the back hole. You can then gently position where you want this. Some people like to have it tilted down, some people like it flat, and some like it tilted up. I like to have a slight tilt down for rain, and then just lightly hold it where it is, ensuring the carriage bolt stays positioned inside the track. We're then going to repeat the same process on the opposite side. With all of our hardware loosely installed on a unit, it's time to put our canopy up there. I'm going to do this by myself, but if you have a friend, it does help. Now that we have our canopy in position, we're going to use our securing devices and our smaller carriage bolt. How this works, you'll start with one and drop your carriage bolt through there. Once you have that, position it to grab both ends of the bar. And again, we will leave these loose for the time being. Repeat this procedure for all four corners. Once we have all four corners installed, ensure that you have the same spacing on each corner, and then tighten them down. While securing these, I like to go to this outer ring on the second one and line that up with the black arm. Ensure all 4 sides are similar. They don't need to be perfect. You will have some excess in either the front or the back. Here we've decided to leave about a 1/4 inch excess towards the rear. Now that we have our canopy secured, as you can see, we're a little out of whack. Now we're gonna go around and fine tune and make sure we have it where we want it. To adjust the canopy where you'd like it, it helps to have somebody eyeball it while you move it where it needs to go. And then using your 17mm wrench or ratchet, tighten what needs to be tightened. Once you have your canopy where you want it, make sure you go around and tighten every bolt. Thank you for joining me on this 3rd-Function kit install and canopy install. Hopefully this gives you the tools and knowledge to be able to tackle it on your own. If not, please book an appointment at crystaltractor.com for our service department. We can help you at any day.